Well, folks, good day to you one and all. And as I say, every single Wednesday night, it's the time that we love. It's Wednesday night, it's iRacing. It is one of our favorite times of the day and of the week. And tonight, Western Province Sports and GT Masters. And as always, the voice of West Province Motorsport, Frankie Yennis, joining me in the studio. Frankie, good day to you.
Gary, good day. We come to you from Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada, from the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park for the following round of the iRacing Master Series. And the drivers are in the Chevy Corvette C7s. And the track is 3.91 kilometers long, outside temperature 19, track temperature 33, partly cloudy, 3k an hour wind. It's going to be brilliant stuff to watch these Chevy Corvette C7 V8s thunder around Canadian Tire Park circuit.
Quite a bit of practice that's been done by a lot of the guys. As oh, there we go. That's actually a very nice shot. As let's just hope that the blimp moves around in a usable fashion, because what happens with the blimp shot is that the blimp actually moves around in the air during the course of the race, and it's always nice to try and get some of these different blimp shots. But having said that, Peter, the Ubears, Frankie, I think might just dominate tonight's racing.
Well, yeah, we'll have a look and see. Peter and Sandra Bakari, Herman Lazarus, Robbie Teams, those 5 times are beginning to come through right now. We're still waiting for people like Luke Lucchesi, Johan Fourie, Willem Pina, Graham Stephen, to name a few names, to put up a couple of times, as that will be Peter Hubert that's making his way around. He's done a 1:11.299. That's the quickest time out there. Johan Fourie pops up there in P2 with a 1:11.470 for Fourie. And at this point in time, the first 6 cars are within a second, with almost 4 minutes done of the 10-minute qualifying session.
So Willem Botha goes to the top end of the list, and well, that was a pretty good time, a 1 minute 11.299, and I think that that's going to be probably at least the front 3 rows of the grid. As you said, we haven't seen some of these other drivers. Boom! Look, the Kizzy says good evening to you one and all. A 1 minute 11.031. And Mrs. Lukizi Senior, good evening to you from the second gear studio, as your son puts it up on the front row of the grid. Provisionally, at this stage of the fight, just 300s quicker than Petty Hubert, and 2/10 quicker than Willem Botha. Johan Fourie still out there on circuit. Ooh, snaking it around heavily. He will not be happy with the second row of the grid. He will want front row of the grid, that's for sure.
Well, yes, he pops up there in P3, does Johan Fourie, with a 1:11.152. So he is on the inside of that second row, with so far having Willem Botha sit there on his outside. Francois Hubert has dropped down into P5, so far 5/10 of a second behind Luke Lucchesi. And Peter van der Spey, Captain Pete, so far in the Red Bull Chevy Corvette C7, sitting there in P6, and he is 0.54 behind Luke Lucchesi. That is now the quickest guy out there with a 1:10.699.
Yep, he just went even quicker. Michael Stephen and Stephen McCarthy still to come up and put up some times, as well as Raymond Duggan and Renier Hubert as well. Peter van der Spey on the third row of the grid. He won 11.4, so that's just 7/10 off. So far up to Graham Stephen, everybody within a second. I do think that, oh, look, the keys, he is still running. Yep, he's still trying to put up a quicker time, but having looked at that, I don't think it's going to be any quicker than what it was before. JJ van der Merwe puts a nice time up there. Swayze Hubert's on his way into the pits. We're waiting to see where Raymond Duggan is going to get into this one. Raymond Duggan hasn't put up a time yet. He's actually come out a bit late, unless he made an error in his initial lap. and it'll be interesting to see where he comes in. So Michael Stephen and Stephen McCarthy, neither of them have actually put up a time yet. So front row of the grid provisionally, Luke and Peter, Francois and Johan on the second row, Willem and Peter van der Spey on the third row, Graham Stephen and Timothy Stanton once again in the top 10. So Timothy is, that's just a little bit too much for Willem Pina. So I do believe that that's the last chance for him to be able to get any higher up in the standings. I don't think that, although there might be enough time, for 1 minute 10, 6 minutes 48, yep, I think he can put in another one.
Yeah, but Pina is in pit lane. We're having a look at that 71 car that was going around. Can't pick his number up here on the monitor. And that is the car you see on screen there.
That's Raymond Duggan.
That's Duggan that had a bit of a problem with that 71. Let's see if he can work his way up that leaderboard. It currently is not on the leaderboard as Raymond Duggan. Got to put some kind of a time up there, Raymond. No, don't see him up yet. That's because of that off that he had early on. Willem Botha is in pit lane. Willem Pina is in pit lane. And so is Swiss and Reinier Hubert.
So obviously all those top guys have already done their 2 laps. Graham Stephen is still out there. Oh, I think Graham Stephen stops now as well. Timothy Stanton, he's still on a flyer. So he's still got 1 more to go. So he could pop it up a bit further. But the front 6, the front 3 rows, they have all, according to, you can see on the left-hand side there, it's gone a grey colour, which means they've now done their outlap. They've done their 2 flyers. And they are now, Timothy Stanton with the Roland Manifolds car sticks it into the wall, so that pretty much takes him out of it. Leonardo Bakari, is he still going to be out there? Yep, Leonardo Bakari is out there. Raymond Duggan is still out there as well. And it'll be interesting to see where Raymond Duggan can slot in, because Michael Stephen and Stephen McCarthy, the 2 of them have not put up any lap times yet, and they are not out on circuit either. So I just hope that they're going to be able to click into the receiver, and Raymond Duggan comes in on the 6th row of the grid on the outside. I would have expected him to be a little bit further forward than that, but I think because of the fact that he came out late, he first put in a solid one to make sure that he's there and thereabouts, and this is the one that actually counts, because he has enough time to be able to do another complete lap, and I would expect Raymond Duggan to be a bit closer than a 1.5.
We've got a minute to go in the qualifying session, and Duggan sitting out there in P12, 1.5 seconds behind provisional pole sitter Luke Lucchesi, and approaching 45 seconds. I think that Lucchesi has probably done more than enough to keep himself there on pole, with Peter Hubert on second pole, with the second row belonging to Johan Fourie and Francois Hubert. The time is running out. We're approaching 25 seconds before the end of the qualifying session.
He should make it through. There he comes along now. You can see there's the pit row. And let's see what can Raymond... No, is that the pit row? Yes, it is.
Oh, that's pit exit. That's coming out of turn 1.
And it did not change his time. It didn't give him a time at all. So he must have had it off somewhere along the line, and that unfortunately that closed off his opportunity to go any further forward than what he was at that point. So let's have a look, see what is that grid gonna look like. Something like that. Luke Lucchesi alongside a Peter Hubert, locking out Johan Fourie and Francois Hubert, 2 of the frequent flyers that get locked out of the front row of the grid.
Peter van der Spey and Willem Botha in row 3. Row 4 was Graham Stephen, Timothy Stanton. Row 5, Sander Bakari, Robbie Teings. Row 6, Herman Lazarus and Raymond Duggan.
Row 7, JJ van der Merwe and Willem Pina. Then it's Leonardo Bakari and Swiss Hubert. Reinier Hubert and Michael Stephen. I don't think Michael Stephen will be very happy with that, because him and himself both find themselves at the tail end of the pack. Stephen McCarthy has in fact clicked in and onto the grid, but Michael Stephen has not. And in fact, Michael Stephen is the only person that hasn't clocked into the grid yet. So let's hope that he doesn't have connectivity problems. You'll see that should have been there on the back row of the grid, or the second last row, alongside the red car. That's where he would have been. There is Renier Hubert, and he should have been alongside Renier Hubert, and you can see that he's not actually there. So that's a bit of a pity that he's not been able to make it in. Let's hope that he can still do it. It's not completely impossible. So Luc Lucchesi and Pieter Hubert on the front row of the grid. That's going to be something else going down to turn number 1. There you can see the Momo car of Luc Lucchesi. Pieter Hubert in the... He likes that Pennzoil colours. That pretty much works for him. And then on that second row of the grid, there you can see the black and white on the outside. That's Francois Hubert. Peter van der Spey on the inside of that. And then, Johan Ferree on the inside of that. That's the monster, the black with the green. And then behind that is Peter van der Spey. That's up against the pit wall. That's the Red Bull. And then alongside that is Willem Botha with the purple and the blue.
Right, so Michael Stephen, as a matter of fact, didn't do the practice session neither. So he logged on 19, logged on 18 practiced, 18 qualified. So can safely say that Michael Stephen will not take part in this one. So 18 of the 19 will take to the track in these Chevy Corvette C7s, thundering their way for 45 minutes with one compulsory pit stop around the Canadian Tire Motor Park circuit from Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada.
Well, I think this is going to be a pretty tight one up front. But the nice thing, Frankie, is with the West Province Sports and GT Masters is that you've got a situation where the guys have now been racing for a period of time. There's lots of respect and there's not a lot of accidents. Let's just hope that I'm not putting a commentator's curse on it.
Well, I had a look at the track. It's only turn 5A and 5B that is very close. It's a right-hander, bit of a squirt right-hander that takes you on to that very long Mario Andretti straight before you head to the S's and then down towards the end of the lap. So turn 5A and B, called Moss Corner, that is the closest and the tightest part of the racetrack. Otherwise, it's a very flowing race circuit.
It is actually a very flowing circuit, I must say, and there's a lot of high-speed, undulating entry and exits of corners where you come up onto a blind rise. You can't see the apex of the corner, you can't see the exit of the corner, so it's one that you need to practice. Gerald Maget putting a message up on the group: good race, guys, and have lots of fun out there. He unfortunately, he says, good race, guys, getting back to Switzerland this weekend. We'll be able to get back if there is a race left for the current championship next week, and that's from Gerald Maget. So Gerald, looking forward to having you back in the country in the not too distant future. Luc Lucchesi and Pieter Hubert on the front row of the grid.
Right, that's flowing into that final right corner. The Porsche safety car peels off into pit lane. They drop the hammers, green lights, and off we go. And Luc Lucchesi gets away just in time with the Peter van der Spey and Johan Ferree in that second and third positions. They are followed there by Francois Hubert. Willem Pina loses the circuit there, and he drops down towards the tail end of the field as they busy work their way around, heading towards that turn 5A and B. They're not quite there yet. It's a very flowing racetrack, and right now it's been led by Luc Lucchesi from Pieter Hubert from Johan Ferree.
Well, I did say before the race started, I think the Huberts are maybe going to be dominating this one. Unfortunately, Renier Hubert and Swayze Hubert both involved in incidents already, and that has taken them to the back end of the field. Luc Lucchesi got a bit of a jump there, Frankie.
No, I think as he went, we saw the lights turn green, so I think that's all okay for him. But he's been hassled heavily there by Peter Hubert that sits in that second position. We go a bit further down. We had a look at Herman Lazarus. Here is Willem Pina sitting in that 13th position. There's the intervals. We'll put up the battle box for you soon as they work their way through the final corner. And those first 6 cars, nothing between them. 1:14.680 for Luc Lequezi. He's 7/10 of a second ahead of Peter Hubert, as we see Robbie Teams making his way through, and he sits there just behind Sandro Bakari.
Yep, Herman Lazarus is going up 1 position. Johan Verries actually sitting pretty close at the front end of the field there. Remember, he was locked out of that front row position, and that by 2 very quick lap times that was put together. So Johan Verries starting on the second row of the grid. He's ahead of the man that was alongside him, which is the car that's directly behind him, and that in fact is Francois Hubert that was alongside him on the front row, on the second row of the grid. Graham Stephen, not too shabby for Graham. He is in the one in the Gulf colours, and he's just ahead there of Peter van der Spey.
Yeah, then there's a 1.5 second gap between Van der Spey before we see Timothy Stanton. That's there in P7, and he's got them racked and stacked in there behind him. He's got Sandro Bakari, Willem Botha all the way down to Steve McCarthy in P14. That's stuck in there behind him. Here comes Willem Pina. Right behind Pina, we've got JJ van der Merwe. Stephen McCarthy is also in that fight. Here comes Leonardo Bakari in the Castrol GTX Corvette C7, and he sits there in that 15th position, does Bakari. Raymond Duggan busy working his way around. He sits there just behind Robbie Teams, 4/10 of a second between himself and the car you see ahead of him, and that is Robbie Teams.
Yep, Robbie Teams right ahead of him. That's for half a second looks like, and Robbie Teams is pretty close there onto the back end of that multicolour. Weird, those yellow rims on the Corvette. A bit of a strange colour combination that he's got on that car. You can't exactly miss it.
So that is Duggan that's there in that 11th position. He's just behind Teams, 6/10 of a second. He finds himself behind Robbie Teams, but up front it's all about Luc Lequezi. Lequezi is beginning to run away here from Peter Hubert. There is almost a second between them. A personal best for Peter, a 1:11.139, but an overall quick lap there for Luc Lequezi, a 1:10.992.
Everybody down to Timothy Stanton in 7th position, all within the 1:11 range. So I think it's going to be a pretty close one. We're riding on board with Francois Hubert. Directly in front of him, the Monster Energy car of Johan Verries. Then the Pennzoil entry of Peter Hubert, and the Momo entry, that's the red one up front. Oh, that's going to cost him big. That's going to cost him big. He now did everything to make sure he didn't make contact, and unfortunately the thorough gentleman that he is, he did it all right to not mess up anybody else's race, and that's taken him right out of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, he's dropping down the leaderboard like a fly. He's in 13th position. He's in big trouble. He's going to drop all the way down to the tail end of the field. JJ van der Merwe was in the pits. He's busy making his way out. So Francois finds himself in that 14th position, and it seems like a damaged Corvette C7.
Yeah, there the Hessenfeld car, bang, into the wall. That's very, very hard. And as always, being the thorough gentleman, as we said, he stays right out. The back wing is damaged. You can see that. It looks like, I think it was Timothy Stanton that went off behind him as well. Let's just check who that was.
No, I think that's Sandro Bakari.
Well, Timothy Stanton did also have an off, just a bit of curbstone, comes in pretty deep, pretty hard, and the tail then, yeah, that was the end result, the Roland Manifold's entry there of Stanton. And he almost makes contact there as well. But it's all good and well. Timothy Stanton and Francois Hubert are both in the pits, but Luc Lequezi is in a very good position. He's in fact already onto the back of JJ van der Merwe.
Yeah, just ahead of van der Merwe is Reinier Hubert. So Luc Lequezi on lap number 5 puts a lap on van der Merwe. Lequezi of Race Driver SA and Pantera Racing. Here he comes at the end of the lap. He's got Peter Hubert in there behind him. He's got Johan Fourie. Then there's a bit of a gap before we see Graham Stephen. Here comes the Red Bull car of Peter van der Spey. Van der Spey sitting in that 5th position, 2.6 behind Graham Stephen.
Willem Botha from Robbie Teens, and Robbie Teens has got Raymond Duggan and Sandra Bakari right in there behind him. It's actually a pretty good battle that's going down there. Raymond Duggan. Well, Raymond Duggan, as we said, is not exactly where he would like to be and not where we would expect him either. A little bit further down. You expect to see him around about 6th position, somewhere around there. So he's putting the pressure on the Bolt man, Robbie Teens, the comeback kid, the original comeback kid in Robbie Teens. He's in 10th position. And he's the number 10 car, and Robbie is in 7th position. Just ahead of that is Willem Botha.
Yeah, Raymond Duggan in P8 of RAD Racing sitting there, and he is a 10th of a second behind Robbie Teens, and that's what a 10th of a second looks like. There's nothing between them. He dives to the outside there. Robbie Teens, they're side by side beside them. Beside each other. Behind them is a 72 car of Sandra Bakari, and still he's having a look. Is Duggan at Teens. They are right there with each other. They must be careful of Bakari. He might just walk away with that as they work their way around the final corner.
Well, Sandro Bakari, he rolled his car with the Rallycross last week, Saturday at Golan International Raceway. It hasn't put him off whatsoever. Sandro Bakari having a go there, Robbie Teens and Raymond Duggan. So they're going to have to be very aware of the fact that he's in an idealistic situation. He's saying, well, let's just go for it. Johan Fourie starting to close up on the back of Peter Hubert. Look at that. Oopsie, somebody just went straight. And we'll see if we can pick up who that was for you.
Yeah, we'll have a look and see. You just kept on going straight, didn't bother to turn in at all. Here comes JJ van der Merwe. Remember, he was in the pits early on, and he's already gone a lap down. And bang, into the wall goes van der Merwe.
And he, in fact, did jump back to pits, so that's going to take him a long way out of it. Johan Fourie just behind the Pennzoil car of Peter Hubert. As Raymond Duggan was the success story of 2022, I'm going to sort of like say I think Peter Hubert is the success story of 2023 so far.
At this point in time, I couldn't agree with you more. That's first, second and third you see coming into your shot there. Yes, Sandra Bakari. He's been hassled there by Sandra Bakari. And right behind them is Steve McCarthy. McCarthy's in this fight as well. Here comes Steve through that right-hander. There's a big lock up there. Was that Duggan that locked up? No, it wasn't. It's Willem Pina. That's Willem Pina that you see there on the side of the circuit.
Yep, so it's getting busy all over the show at this stage of the fight. Willem Botha, that was also involved
Willem
with
Botha, apologize.
Yeah, I think it was Willem. Let's just check.
Yes.
Yeah. What was it that was written? Wizard of Oz. That's what's written on. Oh, exact same spot. In fact, look at the marks. You can see the marks from the previous spin that was there. Well, that's a nice, shall we call that, that's our word for the day, a pirouette done by Willem Botha. Back to the front end of the field. It's all about that. The Momo car, it's Luc Lucchesi, and he's starting to stretch them out.
Lucchesi's sitting out there in P1, 1.3 seconds behind Peter Hubert. There you see him in that Pennzoil car. Then it's the monster car of Johan Fourie. That's 0.6 of a second behind Hubert in that third position. Then you've got a 3.3 second gap before you see the man that's in P4. That's Graham Stephen. Then not too far behind him is the Red Bull outfit of Captain Peter van der Spey coming through. Raymond Duggan nearly 10 seconds behind van der Spey in that 6th position, and he's been hassled here by Robbie Teens, Sandra Bakari and Steve McCarthy.
Yep, Steve McCarthy, we weren't sure if he was going to make it to actually start the race. The only man that didn't start the race was in fact Michael Stephen. He's the only one that didn't get to get out there, so probably beaten up by Eskom. Willem Pina, just a little bit further back, he likes his Castrol colours, that's what he represents, that's what he loves. Leonardo Bakari right in there as well, so both Sandro and Leonardo out there. Both of them having a pretty decent run. Timothy Stanton a long way back. Remember, Timothy was involved with that incident earlier on, and he did go into the pits, I think, as well. Let's just make sure that my facts is correct. Yes, so Timothy Stanton is the lead car that's been into the pits. Was enough laps done at that stage of the fight that he can make it to the end?
No.
I don't know, because if you look at the initial information that was given to us, it was a case of, oh, somebody's lost the whole front end of their car there.
That's Van der Merwe. That's JJ.
I think that is JJ van der Merwe that went. I think you could be right with that one. Yeah, he flattened the front end of that car. And yeah, let's just look at the original incident.
Going into that right-hander, just didn't turn in and just whacks that concrete wall just to the right-hand side of that tire barrier,
and he
puts
is
him
in
back
fact
to pits.
Yeah, and he is in fact back in the pits there. You can just see the top end of the car, and yeah, that's what's taken him back into the pit lane. So back to the front end of the field, Frankie, from the top down. I think we'll take those pit stops away. We've got a good idea of what's actually happening there. Remember Willem Botha, Herman Lazarus, Francois Joubert. That's one of the big hitters that's out of it. They've all been into the pits already. So Luc Lequesi leads them out.
Oh, but Joubert, Francois had problems earlier on when he went, I think more or less where you see these guys coming through, and that dropped him all the way down to P15. So Luc Lequesi sits in P1, 1.7 seconds behind Peter Joubert. That's in that second position. And he's got a back marker ahead of him already. That is Swiss Joubert that runs off the circuit to keep out the way, and he takes Johan Fourie out.
Oh my goodness.
The back marker
man.
has taken Johan Fourie, that was in third position, right out of the equation.
And he went straight to pits with that one. He immediately hit the button, did Johan Fourie, and that put him in the pits. So unfortunately, let's just see what's happening with that car. Is he there? Yep, there he stands. There you can see the monster colors. And wow, that was kind of heavy. And unfortunately, that's taken him completely out of it. Let's just have a look at that incident.
Yeah, that was Swiss. He was a back marker. And off the circuit he was clipped there. And boom, that wasn't really his fault. He was clipped there by another competitor. And then tried to turn in, and then he just took out Fourie. He came through. That was Peter Joubert that made contact with him, and then as he came back across the circuit, he went into the side there of Johan Fourie. That was really not Swiss's fault. That.
Yeah, that's a bit of an unfortunate one. So let's try again. We were going to go from the top of the pack down. Luc Lequesi in the Momo car that leads them out. Then the next one coming through there is in fact Peter Joubert. But after that incident, there's now 3 seconds, well 2.9 between himself and the lead man. Then Graham Stephen, as always, doing a lovely job. Peter van der Spey having a pretty good time out there, using Red Bull colors as opposed to the American Air Force colors that he normally likes to run. And then not that far behind Peter van Spey, although it is actually quite a distance, 11 seconds further back. Here he comes, Raymond Duggan. But remember, Raymond Duggan started a long way down, and we said that's not where he really expects to be. But he's already got himself ahead of this little battle. There's Robbie Teens and Stephen McCarthy that just made it onto the grid in time. He finds himself in that 7th position. Then the next man through is the Castro car of Willem Pina, and then, shall we say, having fun out there. There he comes, Sandro Bakari, and his brother is right in there with him, Leonardo.
Yeah, he runs off the top 10, and then nearly 13 seconds behind them, 12.3, is Timothy Stanton that sits there in that 11th position. 3.1 behind him in P12 is Willem Botha that had a horror show. On the opening lap, you saw him right there on the grass, and that cost him dearly right in the beginning in the opening lap of this one. Johan Fourie, well, he's back out on track. He's in 13th position, 32 seconds behind Willem Botha. Now, with 15 minutes done, he has now made a pit stop. If he stays out there, because he knows he cannot go back into the pits again, because he'll end all the way down in P13, 14, maybe even in P15. So he's going to have to push as hard as he can and push towards the checkered flag.
Sandro Bakari, in fact, got past Willem Pina, so that worked pretty fine for him. That was the original replay of that. Then Leonardo Bakari, he also got past. That's because of the fact that the car was in the pits. and then Willem Pina came back on track because Willem was off track. There he is in the Castrol GTX car. There you see the other cars coming through, and that's why Willem Pina has gone that far down. Renier Hubert was on a bit of a fight back, and he was pushing the Miller's car very hard. And Frankie, there once again you see on that blind rise, and it like tapers off. It's almost like the car gets lighter as it comes over the crest, and once again somebody going off in that position. So yeah, now they're getting pretty spread out, I must say. Let's just into the pit lane is Willem Pina. Now I would tend to think that that is a guided decision to come in. Oh, can we get a TV shot of that? There we go.
There's
TV3.
damage on that car. The front left-hand side is damaged.
Yeah, so remember, Willem Pina was the one that went off circuit. This was the incident for Willem Pina. Let's see how much damage does he pick up. Oh yes, that explains that one. But I would tend to think that with the timing that he has got, as you said, 15 laps in, a third of the race already gone, I would tend to think that that is his pit stop. And let's think that Johan Verrie's pit stop was his pit stop as well. And that means that Johan Verrie, Willem Botha and Timothy Stanton are then the highest ranked at this stage of the fight, in 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th position, having already been into the pits and maybe not having to go back in again.
So there was serious damage on the right hand side of that car. I just saw the damage on the left hand side, but when Pina hit that wall you could see that he severely damaged the right hand side. He's got Herman Lazarus in there behind him, 0.5 of a second between himself and Herman as they busy work their way around. But they way down, because ahead of them is the man that's in P6, and that is Robbie Teens. So they are a lap down to Teens, and the other 5 drivers that are ahead there of Robbie Teens is Pina and Lazarus.
It's actually spread itself out quite a bit, a little bit more than what I was expecting. It looks like Graham Stephen has had an off track as well. He was going pretty well up until now. He still finds himself in. You see, Frankie, if you're in third position and you're under pressure from Peter van der Spey, that's how you go off and come back on again. Herman Lazarus still on the back of Willem Pina.
Now remember, these two guys are a lap down, but they are fighting for that 13th position. There's 0.4 of a second between Pina and Lazarus, and that's the only real little fight out there at this point in time. There are massive intervals between every other driver out there as we approach 20 minutes done, 19 minutes almost done. So we are just under halfway. Lazarus nearly hit the back there of Pina and had to take some serious evasive action there, did Herman Lazarus, and that's now dropped him 1.7 seconds behind Willem Pina.
Well, luckily for him, the section where he went off, there was a bit of extra run-off room there, so it didn't cost him too much at that stage of the fight. As Renier Hubert is into the pits, Luc Lekesi in the Momo car leads them out, and I think it's one of those consummate affairs for Luc Lekesi. He's getting away from that man, Peter Hubert, in the Painsville entry. And Peter Hubert, in fact, with what's just happened with Graham Stephen, has now opened that gap up to 6 seconds between them. But don't count out Peter van der Spey. I see Sandro. Oh, Graham Stephen. How's that? The luck of the button. Managed to catch that one live as Graham Stephen went into the wall. Peter van der Spey up into the top 3. El Capitano is on the move. It's working right for Peter van der Spey tonight.
Yeah, Graham lost that position to Peter because of that. He drops down to P4 because he's got a sizable gap on Raymond Duggan. That is in P5. It's just over 10.5 seconds, 10.5 now between Stephen and Duggan as we watch Peter van der Spey work his way around in the Red Bull Racing car. This is a replay of Graham Stephen, very wide, going into that 90-degree right-hander. I think that might be Moss Corner, turn 5 and turn 5 A and B. I think I speak under correction. It's hard to judge from that angle. But yeah, there were the leaders are going through now. That is the tightest part of the circuit. as we see Van der Spey. He's making his way now towards turn 5A and 5B. That is Moss Corner. And that is probably where Stephen went off. He comes back out onto the circuit again, does Graham Stephen. So he's made a pit stop with 21 minutes done.
Francois Joubert starting his fight back after that unfortunate incident where he sacrificed himself to not damage anybody else. And Francois Joubert now starting to make his way up through the pack. He's not that far behind Herman Lazarus in the chipicars.co.za entry. And I think he'll make that one up without too much difficulty. But then there's 16 seconds from there back to Johan Fourie, and him and Johan Fourie are probably on very, very similar pace. So as and if Johan can work his way through, that is as and if I think Francois Joubert will be able to make his way up as well. Looking at Johan Fourie, 14 seconds behind Sandro Bakari, and Sandro Bakari is having a pretty good session right now. Let's have a look at the last lap times. What did Sandro do? Sandro did a one, okay, because Sandro was in the pits, a 1:36.41. Johan Fourie in the 1:11s. Well, there's about 5-6 guys that are doing 1:11s right now. But 1:11.419 for Johan Fourie. That is nowhere near enough to bring him anywhere near the top 6 at this stage of the fight, Frankie, barring pit stops.
Yeah, I don't think Johan will have to make another pit stop. But he was about 15 minutes when he went in after that situation. Renier Joubert in the Miller outfit is in the pit lane as well. And he's busy making his way back out onto the track once again. And he's in that 17th position. Here comes Van der Spey past him. Remember, Van der Spey is on the lead lap, and Renier is not on the lead lap, as Renier makes his way back out onto the track once again in that 17th position.
4 stops.
Yeah, well, he's had a horror show. Van der Merwe has done 3 stops at this point in time. He sits in 18th and last position, does JJ Van der Merwe, and just ahead of him, nearly a minute ahead of him, is Renier Joubert.
Willem Botha is starting to close, well, trying to close on the back end there of the Roland Manifolds car of Timothy Stanton.
Yeah, Stanton in P9, Botha in P10, 0.5 of a second between the two of them as Leonardo Bakari makes his way into the pit lane. So Stanton and Botha, 0.5 of a second separating Stanton from Botha. There's Sandro Bakari, he's in that 11th position. Oh, Swiss getting it all wrong coming out of that final corner. He's a Swiss Joubert, but he managed to rescue that one as Leonardo Bakari makes his way back out onto the track once again.
Francois Joubert and Herman Lazarus, there's the passing maneuver. As we said, Francois Joubert on that fight back, getting past the cheapercars.co.za entry of Herman Lazarus. There's Herman Lazarus, and that's Francois Joubert. But now the gap from there, 50 seconds, that is uncatchable unless we bring this factor into it.
Well, Pieter Joubert is in P1, Luc Lucchesi is in P2. There's just under a second between the two of them. Now, what went wrong for Lucchesi? That's what went wrong for Lucchesi. That's what I'm saying. He's dropped down to that second position and lost that lead there to Pieter Joubert.
Well, that was well picked up. I didn't actually see that one. Let's get another view of that. Try and see exactly. Oh, yeah, he just touched on the grass. And that was the left rear that actually touched on the grass. And from there on out, it just turned itself around. Let's see if we can try and pick that one up for you.
Well, while all this was happening, Gary, Pieter Joubert has made his way into the pits. So he's picked up damage because of this, has Pieter, and he is in the pits. Yeah, so is Luc Lucchesi. Both of them are in pit lane now.
Yep, and there's the next man that's coming through. That is Raymond Duggan. So either way, with having done no pit stops, Raymond Duggan gets himself up into the top 2. He still has to go in, as does Peter van der Spey. Either way, Peter van der Spain, Raymond Duggan having a pretty good run at this stage of the fight. Peter Joubert is in the pits, Robbie Teens is in the pits, Stephen McCarthy is in the pits, and Swayce Joubert is on his way out.
Yeah, so it's all beginning to happen. Yeah, Willem Botha has now worked his way up into that 6th position. Remember, he's also had a bit of a nightmare. He's 5/10 of a second behind Timothy Stanton. That's the 2 cars you see disappearing into that left-hander there. That's just behind the back marker. That is Swayce Joubert. As into the pits comes the man that puts out of the lead, Peter van der Spain.
And here comes the next man, that's Raymond Duggan. Let's see what happens with Raymond Duggan. Can he get in and out as well? No, the Raymond Duggan comes in, which means the next man to come through is going to be Luc Lucchesi. And he has not stopped yet. No, he has. He has.
Yes, he went into the pits at the same time as Peter Joubert because there was contact between the 2 of them. So with all of this, Lucchesi says, well, okay, I had my little problems with Peter Joubert. I'm back in the race. I'm back in the lead again. And I'm going to just keep on doing what I do. Here is Timothy Stanton. And he is fighting with Willem Botha. There are 3/10 of a second between them. They've jumped up to P4 and 5 because they have leapfrogged Raymond Duggan. That is in the pit lane.
So I think that, well, unless Johan Fourie, Johan Fourie hasn't really managed to make up that much. He lost so much. He's now up into 10th position, but I think he's going to probably make up 1 position now as Raymond Duggan. Raymond Duggan's back out on track, and Johan Fourie going to have to make up a bit of space to try and catch up to him. Timothy Stanton, oh, that car gets very light. He's really pushing it hard. But Willem Botha, you can see he's sliding that car around all over the show. 27, call it 28 minutes done of the 45. And it's looking pretty good. And still Luc Lucchesi in the very, very low 1 minute 11s.
Yeah, and he's 11.1 ahead of Peter van der Spain. But this is a good one between Botha and Stanton. That's the 2 cars you see there in P5 and 6, and they're heading towards the final corner as they cross the start finish line. That's what the Corvette C7 looks like from the back end, and oh, it steps right out of line. Wow, I was going to say that's what that car looks like from that view. You saw it from the side view, and the view never changed because he turned it to the right hand side.
On my director's page here, there's no side view. So thank you, Timothy Stanton, for showing us a side view. And well, that's what sponsorship is all about. They Roland manifolds on the side of that motor car coming through very, very clearly. But frankly, look at the back of that motor car in terms of aerodynamics. The Corvette creates lots and lots of downforce.
Yeah, that's what that car looks like from the back end. You see the diffuser at the back as they keep on going. That's him making his way down the Mario Andretti straight, I should say, and he sits there in P5 and he's making his way now towards the S's.
Yep, 6 seconds behind him is the next car, and that's Steve McCarthy. And as you can see, it's not even in the same picture at all. And if he looks in front of him, he's got lots and spots of space. He's 8 seconds off Willem Botha, and that means that you can't see Willem Botha either. You only realize the pace that they're actually running when you look at it from that nose cam.
Well, Willem Botha at this point in time has done extremely well, sitting there in that 4th position. He had a problem not even halfway into lap number 1, and he was playing around at the bottom, and with all this, and then he was on the dirt and all over the place. He's worked his way up into P4 as we have a look at a replay here of Stephen McCarthy having trouble of his own.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't work out for Stephen McCarthy.
He's got more problems than you think.
Yeah, it looks like when he tried to get back on the track, he might have been clipped. Yep.
By Duggan. I think that might be Raymond Duggan that hit him.
Stephen McCarthy. Yep, that was Raymond Duggan. Raymond Duggan, who I think was the man that was involved with that one. Let's just see. Is it Raymond?
Yes.
Yep, that's Raymond Duggan. Oh, and he worked so hard to make up some positions from where he was, and it didn't work for him. So now Raymond Duggan finds himself in the pit lane. Let's see if we can get over the wall. There we can. Raymond Duggan is in the pits. Renier Hubert is there in the pits as well. And yeah, that's going to make their chances a whole heap less than what it could have been. And with that one, it was Leonardo Bakari that made up an additional position, because there he goes through, and that's where he made up one spot higher up. So it's all about that man, Luke Lucchese, in the Momo car. It's all working. When it works for Luke Lucchese, it goes perfect for the whole night.
Yeah, well, he's 13 seconds ahead of Peter van der Spy, that sits in that second position with 31 minutes out of 45 that's been completed so far. Captain Pete sitting in second. Graham Stephen, well, with all this drama that's been going on around, remember he had drama of his own, he's fought his way back into that third position. He's 7 seconds behind Van der Spy. Botha sits there in P4 with a 111.339. That's a personal best there for Willem Botha. That's had a massive fight back. Timothy Stanton is in P5. He's nearly 10 seconds behind Botha, and his last lap was a 112.719. There is Willem Botha for Race Driver SA Esports, and also Toyota Gazoo Racing. Timothy Stanton in that fifth position, who's had himself sideways as the drone was chasing him down. He still got himself sideways. Robbie Teague sitting in that 10th position, and still not much between himself and Bakari, only 0.2 of a second between Leonardo Bakari and Robbie Teague for P9 and 10.
Raymond Duggan on his way out of the pits as we ride on board with the Boltman Robbie Teague, the original comeback kid, in there behind Leonardo Bakari. Leonardo and Sandro, two brothers, they found themselves never more than 2 cars between the two of them, although the gaps are varied. Just look at that undulation. You can't see the exit of that corner, and a nice apex there, and now he's got the good drive, and I think it's going to bring him a whole lot closer.
Yeah. Here comes Robbie Teague, Bakari on his left hand side. He moves up there side by side, and look, right behind them is race leader Luke Lucchese. Now Luke, if I was Luke, I'll just lift off out of this one. You don't want to get into a fight between these two.
Not Luke. He doesn't lift off. He just keeps the hammer down, and he makes up that position. That actually splits up that fight that we were busy watching with the two of them. Johan Ferrari finds himself now 5 seconds behind Leonardo Bakari and up into 8th position already. Let's have a look at the latest lap times. That means that Johan Ferrari is in the pretty quick 111.2. Yep, he's doing the same lap times as what Luke Lucchese is. So if things hadn't gone wrong earlier on, he would have actually found himself right there, as Peter Hubert is on the move as well.
Yeah, Peter Hubert, and he's going to put a lap there on Renier that just keeps right out the way. He's not going to get involved in that fight at all. But you were talking about Johan Ferrari. He was 5 seconds behind Sandro Bakari. It's now 4.7, make that 4.6. So he's busy closing up on him as Timothy Stanton makes his way back into pit lane.
So Johan Ferrari, as you said, is closing down. So that means Timothy Stanton's going to drop down. That means Johan Ferrari is going to go up yet another position. And that brings Johan. Somehow he always makes a way back. You must know. A 12.7 by Sandro and 11.3, 1.4 seconds. And that means 2.5 laps from now is going to be all over the back of Sandro Bakari. And Sandro's not that far away from the 777 of Peter Hubert, although 30 laps down, 35 minutes, 10 minutes left, probably get to about 37 laps in total.
Yeah, that gap has now dropped down to 3.1 between the two of them as they make their way through turns 5A and B. That is Moss Corner. That is the tightest part of the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park Raceway, and he is closing. He is 2.8 behind Bakari. He can visually see Sandro Bakari ahead of him down the road.
Yep, no doubt about it. He is closing down on Sandro. Now, Sandro will be, Sandro can quite rightly be a bit disappointed that he's not in the top 5, because this has been one of his best races for a long time for Sandro Bakari, and he's normally just a little bit further back, but I would have thought on his present form he might have actually broken into the top echelons. But then again, keep in mind, Peter van der Spey started, I think he was down in 6th position on the grid originally when they started. Peter van der Spey, with what's happened to some of the big hitters up front, Francois Joubert, Johan Fourie, people like that, Raymond Duggan also been involved, and with them falling by the wayside, Peter van der Spey keeping it nice and smooth and clean, although he's 15 seconds off Luc Lucchesi. Oh, what the undulation on that circuit. Although he's 15 seconds behind Luc Lucchesi, he's 6 seconds ahead of Graham Stephen.
I just saw an overtaking maneuver there. Sandro Bakari moved up into P5 and Peter Joubert dropped down to P6. There's 1.6 seconds between the two of them, as Johan Fourie busy coming through as well. Peter Joubert is going backwards. Peter Joubert is now behind Johan Fourie, so something must have happened out there to Peter Joubert that we didn't see. Well, that's an overtaking maneuver there, the maneuver there by Fourie, but something happened a bit further on between Peter Joubert, because he's dropping down like a fly. As well, there you see what happened. He just turned it around, lost the position there, and well, battled from there on.
And it's pointing in the wrong direction. On the grass, it's so difficult to get it all back together again, and that is where that one happened. And then we also had Willem Pina that was off circuit as well, and he just ran it a little bit wide, kept it nice and smooth with the Creswell car. Just look at that on the grass. You've just got to be so tentative. Ooh, rubs it up against the wall, and it doesn't look like it has affected the back wing at all, so that looks like that is all fine for him. Back on board with Johan Fourie as he closed on Sandro Bakari. Oh hell yeah, he's a whole heap closer.
Yeah, there is now a second between them. There is 9/10 of a second though between Johan Fourie and Peter Joubert. So Johan did get his nose ahead of Peter because of that problem that Peter Joubert had, but he's not getting away from Joubert is Fourie, and Fourie is now just under a second behind Sandro Bakari.
Oh, he's pushing it very, very hard to try and make up that gap. Well, he's got to get a move on. He's 38, almost 39 minutes into it. It only gives him 6 more minutes at this rate. They're only about 4.5 to 5 laps that they will still get in, and it looks like it's going to be a possible passing maneuver in this race still for Johan Fourie up into 5th.
Well, I'm watching the fight for P9 and 10. Remember that Francois Joubert was out of it virtually because of problems. His last lap he was a lot quicker than what Robbie Teens was, and he's now only 1.6 seconds behind Teens. So Robbie Teens, as you see Robbie disappear off your screen, is going to come under severe attack here by Francois Joubert.
1.9 seconds in fact quicker, but the next trick is Willem Botha has gone into the pits. So that turns everything around, and who comes through? Sandro Bakari. Who does he bring with him? Remember I said somehow Johan Fourie finds his way back to the front? Johan Fourie finding his way back towards the front. He's already up into that 5th position. Sandro Bakari, where he would have liked to have been in the top 5. Yes, he is right in there.
Well, there is 4/10 of a second between Bakari and Fourie, and 8/10 of a second between Fourie and Peter Joubert, the man that we ride on board with, and that is that fight for P4. And Johan wants at 4th position, but Peter wants at 4th position.
He wants to be there at the right time. I think that's why he's pushing so hard.
Definitely.
You go through, I go with you.
Yeah, and Sandro Bakari doesn't want to give it to any of them at this point in time, but he's 32 seconds behind Graham Stephen. He's Sandro Bakari, so he is defending all he can. How long will it last?
Oh no!
There's contact between Bakari and Fourie, and once again Johan Fourie tumbles down the leaderboard. Not that far though, we dropped down to P7.
Well, he had it all right. He was going right around the outside, but just came a little bit too close, and yeah, that takes him out, and then Sandro off as well.
Aye.
Wow, how's that for a turn up for the books? Sandro Bakari getting it back on track reasonably quickly. Johan Fourie pointing in the wrong direction. So Sandro Bakari, who was being passed, gets back on pretty quickly, and that brings him back into that sixth position. Francois Joubert is on the move. Francois Joubert is right in there on the back end of Robbie Teams.
Well, Johan Fourie jumped back to pits. He's dropping down that leaderboard again. But yeah, that fight that we spoke about earlier on between Robbie Teams and Francois Joubert, there's 0.2 of a second between them. Behind them is Rainier Joubert. He's a lap down. Johan Fourie busy making his way back out onto the track once again. But we keep an eye on this one. Teams in P9, Francois Joubert in P10, 0.4 of a second between the two of them. And behind them is the back marker in the Miller's car, Rainier Joubert.
Wow, what an interesting one. So with just 3 minutes to go, Frankie, with Willem Pinaar in the pits, let's just run from the top down.
Luc Lucchesi, 16 seconds in the lead from Peter van der Spy, who is nearly 19 seconds ahead of Graham Stephen, that is in that third position. He's 21 seconds ahead of Peter Joubert, who is 4 seconds ahead of Willem Botha, who is 14 seconds ahead of Timothy Stanton. Sandro Bakari was in the pits, and Bakari makes his way out. That means Francois Joubert will now be in P7, Robbie Teams will be in P8, and then Sandro Bakari 2.4 behind him will be in P9, and rounding off the top 10 is Herman Lazarus 6.2 behind Sandro Bakari.
With just 2 minutes to go, there's no ways that Johan Fourie, barring somebody having accident in front of him, is going to be able to go any further forward, going back into the pits again after having had that incident going around the outside of Bakari, that kind of thing. That's what cost him last time around. And then Leonardo Bakari, Raymond Duggan, a horror show for Raymond Duggan, the success story of 2022 in that 13th position from Willem Pinaar, who's a lap down from a Suisse Joubert. That is a lap down, and he's just went off the track. Did Suisse Joubert in the Oreo car. There's a C under braking, just went in a bit. Oh, look at that understeer, he locks up the front, but no major damage done there, and we are right into the end of this one. I think it's only right that we go back to the man that's had it all right today, and that's Luc Lucchesi, as Johan Fourie is still in the pits.
Yeah, Johan Fourie, not one that he would want to remember, that's for sure, but one that Luc Lucchesi would certainly want to remember, of Pantera Racing and Race Driver SA, busy making his way through Moss Corner. That's turn 5A and B. That kink is known as turn 5C, as they work their way down that long back straight. Here's Peter van der Spy, that's in that second position. He's working his way through turn 5A, B and C, through Moss Corner, and then that little bit of a kink that's known as 5C, and then he works his way down that Mario Andretti straight.
I think Luke's going to have to do one more lap, quite possibly. He's going to come through too quickly. Yep, so here we go. The champ, Luc Lucchesi, on the last lap in the Momo car. In there behind him, Peter van der Spy. Here he comes through now. He's quite a long way back. It's 18 seconds. Either way, Peter van der Spy will be super chuffed right now.
Yeah, I saw the white flag come out for Luc Lucchesi. There's a white flag as well, you see, for Van der Spy. There's Graham Stephen, 18 seconds behind Van der Spy. He was in third. He had a problem early on, dropped down, and then worked his way back into that third position. He's going to put a lap there on Suisse Joubert as they head into turn number 1. Peter Joubert sits in P4. He's 19 seconds behind Graham Stephen. He's Peter Joubert. Then that little fight still going on once again here between Robbie Teams and Sandro Bakari for P8.
Sandro Bagori not giving up. He wants Robbie Tings' position. Keep an eye on that red number 1. That is the Momo car of Luke Lucchesi as he comes up towards the line.
To the final corner he comes. He'll win this one with 19 seconds to spare. Luke Lucchesi, here is my success story for this one. Peter van der Spey, 19, nearly 20 seconds behind him, but the captain will be super chuffed with finishing in that second position.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a very happy captain, Peter van der Spey. That was a brilliant drive. Not the fastest drive he's ever done, but uber consistent and making use of other people's errors and untimely mistakes and being caught up in other people's incidents. He stayed out of it. He stayed on the circuit. He comes up second. Graham Stephen comes up third. Peter Hubert, the next man to come through in the Pennzoil 777.
And believe it or not, only one more car on the lead lap behind Peter Hubert, and that will be Willem Botha as Hubert comes around the final corner to finish his race in P4. And the last man on the lead lap, nearly 12 seconds behind Peter Hubert, working his way around the final corner now for Race Driver SA Esports, is Willem Botha. 18 cars, 5 cars end on the lead lap.
Well, I see Johan Fourie has come back out of the pits, but that's basically it for him. And yeah, there's no ways he's going to get any further forward than that. Wow, what a race. That was something else. And let's just have a look at the qualifying. How was it actually at the qualifying? Luke, yep, Peter, Johan Fourie, Francois, Peter van der Spey, 5th up to 2nd. Luke up the front, stayed at the front. Johan Fourie a long way down. So a couple of happiness and a couple of horror stories amongst that. Sandro Bagori that started in that 9th position. And yeah, it was interesting for him. Graham Stephen going slowly but surely towards the front end, and then eventually ending up in that 3rd. So Luke Lucchesi from lights to flag, or from flags to flags for Race Driver SA Pantera Racing. He wins it. Peter van der Spey, brilliant drive. Faultless drive is the right description for that one. Graham Stephen, love to see him back up in the front 3 once again.
Yeah, well, 5 cars on the lead lap. Can you believe it? What a race. Everybody 1 lap or more down. Stephen McCarthy finishing 14 laps down. JJ van der Merwe 23 laps down. That was a retirement. And of course, Michael Stephen not getting out onto the circuit at all.
Sure. Not what I expected, I must admit. I thought a lot more people would be on the lead lap, given 1 minute 11, 1 minute 12 was around about the fastest lap times that you were going to get. And in a 45-minute race, you wouldn't expect that there would only be then the top 5 on the top end. Bad luck, I would think Francois Hubert.
Francois finished in 7th. I would go with Johan Fourie in this one, finishing 3 laps down.
Yeah.
And he just was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
But my driver of the day, only one, Captain Peter van der Spey.
Yeah, no, I must say, Captain Peter van der Spey, I think it was brilliant. Well done, Captain Pete. It's nice to have him back in the racing again. And Graham Stephen, a good run. Peter Hubert, as always, up there. Willem Botha, as always, up there. Timothy Stanton, always top 6, 7, 8. Francois Hubert, lower down than normal, but because of the incident, Robbie Tings, the man that's always smiling, the comeback kid in the top 10. Sandro Bagori, interesting race for Sandro Bagori, and I'm sure he would have loved that. Herman Lazarus in the cheapercars.co.za entry, I think he'll be a little disappointed. Down in 10th, I think he would have liked to have been just a little bit higher up. Taking away a whole bunch of points from tonight from Johan Fourie, Willem Pina, Swiss, Renier. Stephen, unfortunately, not been able to complete that one either. So a couple of the big hitters that lost out a lot of points there tonight. Frankie, closing word from your side with a thought for the next round at Killarney International Raceway, the Power Series on Saturday down at Killarney, where you're going to see a lot of these guys. In fact, Peter van der Spey should be out there in the sports and GT class on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I think it's going to be interesting stuff. GTI Challenge is going to be absolutely amazing. But to get back to the iRacing Master Series, next Saturday, Saturday, listen to me, we're talking about Saturday. Next week, Wednesday, 26th of August, we go to Lime Rock, where we will be racing Mazda MX-5 cars. Much slower cars, less power compared to the Corvette C7s, but very, very lovely little race cars to drive. Very close action with the Mazda MX-5s.
And then, subject to confirmation, on Sunday, a 4-hour event starting at 4 o'clock, and that is subject to confirmation. And then also, tomorrow night, we're going to be coming to you at the same time as this evening, and that is going to be with the Renault Clio series. There's already, I think, about 17 entries, the likes of Jana van der Westhuizen that's now joined in there as well. So probably be up to around about 20 if the load shedding doesn't affect it too much. Thanks very much for joining us. From our side, Gary Fleming, on behalf of the Second Gear Production studios and team, Frankie Yennes, the voice of West Bromwich Motorsport, always Mike's side here in the studio and down at Kalani and KPL Drivers and at Klein Plaas Mega and at the Half Main and at the Western Province Karting, and then also at the Rallycross as well. And he'll probably be part of the team for 2023 that's going to bring a World Rallycross back to Kalani International Raceway as well. From our side, Gary Fleming, enjoy your evening. It's been awesome to be here with you, and look forward to coming back to you tomorrow night with a Clio Cup with a bit of luck on Sunday at 4 o'clock with a 4-hour endurance, and then, as Frankie said, back with Sports and GT Masters same time next week, Wednesday. Good night to you, one and all.